There's a state that feeds a nation, runs the world's technology economy, and moves more imported cargo than anywhere else in the Western Hemisphere. And it sits on top of one of the most dangerous fault systems on the planet. Why there? Why did all of that, the farms, the ports, the wealth, the power, end up on this one strip of Pacific coastline? The easy answers are the gold rush, Silicon Valley, Hollywood. But those are events. They're chapters. They're not the story. The real story starts with mountains, valleys, rivers, and a coastline that faces the largest ocean on Earth. To understand California, you have to understand its geography, because almost nothing about this state happened by accident. California isn't one landscape. It's 4 distinct geographic zones stacked side by side, each operating by its own logic. On the western edge, a long Pacific coastline that is, in most places, rugged and unforgiving. But tucked into it are a handful of exceptional natural harbors. San Francisco Bay, an enormous inland sea connected to the ocean through a single narrow passage. San Diego, deep and sheltered to the south. These are geographic gifts that would eventually determine where civilization clustered. Move inland and you hit the coast ranges, low, persistent ridges that block moisture from the interior. Cross those and you fall into the Central Valley. This is the engine, a flat, fertile trough nearly 450 miles long, sealed by the Sierra Nevada to the east and the Coast Ranges to the west, drained by 2 major rivers that funnel everything out through San Francisco Bay. Flat land, river drainage, port access, that is the foundational recipe for agricultural civilization. To the east, the Sierra Nevada. This is a wall, 400 miles of granite rising above 14,000 feet. For most of early history, it was a near absolute barrier to movement from the continent's interior. It didn't stop people, but it forced movement through a very small number of passes, and that concentration of movement would shape everything that followed. Beyond that, desert, the Mojave, the Sonoran Edge, where geography stops being an advantage and starts being a constraint. Before a single human decision was made, California had already drawn a map of possibilities. The Central Valley's soil is deep and rich, built up over millennia by rivers pouring off the Sierra. The growing season is long, sometimes nearly year-round. But here's the catch. The valley doesn't get much rain. Its extraordinary productivity wasn't passive, it was engineered. The Sierra's snowpack provided the water. Canals, aqueducts, and reservoirs delivered it. Geography gave the opportunity. Infrastructure activated it. The result? Almonds, pistachios, grapes, tomatoes, strawberries, cotton, rice. California produces a significant share of the fruits, nuts, and vegetables consumed across the entire United States. That's the Central Valley doing exactly what its geography set it up to do. Then there was gold. In 1848, gold-bearing veins in the Sierra foothills triggered the fastest mass migration in American history to that point. Tens of thousands of people poured into a remote corner of the continent in under 2 years. And when they arrived, the bay was there. The valley was there. The infrastructure demand created by all those people built the ports, the roads, and eventually the railroads that would define California's economy for the next century. Oil came later, in the San Joaquin Valley and the south, making California an early petroleum powerhouse before Texas even entered the picture. Resource after resource. All of it drained and exported through the geographic system the terrain had already laid out. Here's the principle that explains where every major city on Earth is located. Cities form where friction is lowest. Every time goods or people have to move, there are obstacles: mountains, rivers, distance. Cities grow where those obstacles can be managed. And California has 2 cities that illustrate this perfectly. San Francisco sits at the mouth of the only significant natural water gap through the Coast Ranges along the entire California shoreline. Before the railroad, before the highway, if you wanted to reach California's interior from the Pacific, you went through the bay. Everything funneled through this one geographic choke point. The city that grew there became the financial and commercial capital of the American West. Los Angeles is the more instructive story because it breaks the rule. LA has no natural harbor. The coastline is shallow, exposed, and logistically difficult. By all geographic logic, it shouldn't have become a major port city. And for a long time, it wasn't. What changed? The railroad connected it to the transcontinental network in the 1870s and 1880s. Then, the federal government built an artificial port at San Pedro, what became the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach, now the busiest import complex in the Western Hemisphere. LA is geography's great exception. Infrastructure investment overriding natural disadvantage. What the basin did have was flat, buildable land, proximity to Pacific trade routes, and no geographic ceiling on expansion. The Transcontinental Railroad is the other hinge point. The Sierra Nevada had been the wall. The Central Pacific found the solution. Donner Pass, a single gap at 7,000 feet through which came the iron link connecting California to the continent. Every population boom, every industry that followed in the 20th century, was downstream of that one geographic solution. California has 39 million people, the most of any state. But look at a density map, and most of it is nearly empty. The Sierra is sparse. The deserts are almost uninhabited. The far north has a fraction of the population its size would suggest. The people are on the coast, concentrated in two enormous clusters. The San Francisco Bay Area, roughly 8 to 9 million people, sits in a geographic bowl defined by the bay itself. The water didn't just create the port. It created a natural boundary that concentrated development, capital, and infrastructure in a compact space. The Los Angeles basin holds somewhere between 13 and 18 million people, in a coastal plain ringed by the San Gabriel and Santa Monica Mountains. The mountains stopped northward sprawl, so LA spread south, east, and along the coast. The basin became the container. San Diego anchors the southern coast, built around one of the Pacific's best natural harbors and a military geography that made it a critical naval hub. Between LA and San Francisco, no comparable city. The clustering pattern is a direct product of where the harbors were, where the flat land was, and where the trade routes converged. Geography didn't suggest this layout, it demanded it. If you want to understand why the world looks the way it does, make sure to subscribe. This is what we do here. Put all of this together and you get something unusual. A state structurally positioned to do several very different things at scale simultaneously. Agriculture from the Central Valley. Trade through two world-class Pacific port complexes facing the ocean that connects California directly to Asia and Latin America, long before anyone coined the phrase Pacific Century. And then there's the technology economy, which looks, on the surface, like it has nothing to do with geography. Silicon Valley doesn't sit on a river, it's not a port, it's not a mining district. But look closer. The Santa Clara Valley sits at the southern end of San Francisco Bay. Mild climate, flat land, and Stanford University, endowed with land from a railroad baron's fortune, positioned it to become the anchor of a technology cluster built on proximity, talent, and capital. The Bay Area had already accumulated financial infrastructure and port-driven wealth before technology arrived. When the defense industry came to California in the 1940s and 50s, drawn by its Pacific coastline and available land for aerospace, it laid the foundation for the engineering culture that became the semiconductor and software industry. Geography created the preconditions. Human decisions activated them. Every state has limits. California's are significant and worth understanding. Water is the most fundamental. The Central Valley's productivity depends on Sierra snowpack delivered through hundreds of miles of canals and aqueducts. In drought years, the entire agricultural system comes under stress. Los Angeles had an even more acute version of this problem. The city exhausted its local water supply decades before the 20th century was half over. The solution, the Los Angeles Aqueduct, pulling water from the Owens Valley hundreds of miles away, is one of the most dramatic infrastructure stories in American history. It worked, but it locked Southern California into a permanent dependency on imported water. Fire is the second constraint. California's Mediterranean climate, wet winters, dry summers, builds up vegetation and ignites it. The Santa Ana winds, hot, dry gusts blowing from the inland desert toward the coast each autumn, are baked into the landscape. They were burning California long before cities were in the way. As development has pushed into foothill and mountain edge terrain, the exposure has only grown. Earthquakes are permanent. The Pacific and North American plates meet directly beneath California's most populated corridors. The San Andreas Fault, the Hayward Fault, these aren't historical curiosities. They're active features that have reshaped cities before and will again. And finally, containment. California's best geography, the Bay Area Bowl, the LA Basin, is also only so much of it. The mountains don't move. As those zones fill up, land becomes scarce, costs rise, and the very geography that created the wealth begins to constrain who can access it. Geography set generous boundaries here, but they are still boundaries. So, why California? Why did the most productive farmland, the most valuable technology cluster, the busiest port complex in the hemisphere, and the most populous state in the country all end up in the same place? It wasn't luck, it wasn't sunshine, it wasn't a series of fortunate accidents. It was a Pacific-facing coastline with exceptional natural harbors, a massive interior valley made fertile by Sierra snowmelt, a mountain wall that concentrated transcontinental access through a handful of passes, turning those passes into highways of wealth, a geography that faced the right ocean at exactly the right moment in history. Geography didn't write California's entire story. The decisions made about water, railroads, ports, and land use all mattered. The people who came shaped it. But geography set the incentives. It made certain outcomes more likely before a single decision was made. That's the geography effect. And if this is the kind of thinking you want more of, stick around. There's a lot more to explore.